Окей, я запускаю тогда людей. Hello, everyone. So just a small reminder that today's our meetup will be in English, so please prepare all your questions in English. And today we will discuss cybersecurity analysis, so-called new IABA certificates that. Sorry, I just can hear myself in YouTube. So new certificate from IABA for cybersecurity analysis. And today we have our new guest, Karina Gardenia, certified business analyst in cybersecurity analysis. And she will just share her expertise in this certificate with all of us, guys. So prepare your questions and just enjoy our meetup. And just one small point that please ask your questions after a question maybe from Karina, or just wait until the end of her presentation, just not to interrupt her. So that's all from my side, I believe. Karina, you're welcome.
Sure. Shall we start or shall we wait for anyone else?
I believe we can start because we already have the translation on YouTube. And
okay. I'm gonna share my screen. Hi, everyone. We had a bit of a debate with Victor about the language in which to do this presentation, and ultimately decided in English because kind of my Belarusian is not quite good, but at least I can probably say Dobry вечер. And that's about it. Let me try to share my screen and let me know when you can see the presentation. 1 sec.
Yep, we see it.
So let's start. First of all, the obligatory kind of slide and point about the agenda for today's meeting or meetup. Of course, a little bit of an overview or an introduction from my side. Then the biggest portion of today's presentation about the CCA overall, what it is, what are the current package options for those of you who maybe are interested in trying it for yourself, the knowledge areas that the certification covers, the learning materials, and a kind of a peculiar module structure that is being offered by the IAB in their learning materials for CCA. And of course, the reason probably we're all here is it worth it? And closer to the end of the presentation, we're going to have a Q&A section in case any of you have any questions. So let's start a little bit about myself. I've been in IT for about 6 years, almost 7 actually. And you could say I've been a jack of all trades. I've been a tech writer, I've been a BA, I've been a product owner. In some projects, I've been all three at the same time. I think it's kind of a story familiar to all of you. I hold several certifications, the CCA, of course. The latest one was the CBAP and the ICP, which is the IC Agile Professional Certification. Currently, I'm working as a senior BA with the a company here in Ukraine, which is called SoftServe. I don't know if you're familiar with the name. We are currently, I think, a little bit over 10,000 people, have offices in multiple countries, Ukraine, Poland, Bulgaria, the States, of course. And I think recently we opened an office in Dubai even because we have a lot of customers there. So trying to conquer the world one country at a time. I don't know how useful it's going to be, but I hold a master's degree in comparative linguistics and have a couple publications in that even. It's unrelated to the BA work in some matters, but I would say that um, the role of a business analyst is somewhat close to that of an interpreter or a translator, which is where the degree comes in handy. And as for the hobbies, another obligatory point, pre-pandemic, I was really big on traveling around the world and attending like big arena rock concerts and festivals. But then the pandemic hit, and I think as for a lot of us, the main hobby is the existential crisis we're all having now and then. In case you want to reach out to talk more about CCA or anything else BA related, you can reach me via LinkedIn and also the email. I'm going to share this presentation with Victor after today's meetup, so he would probably be able to share it with the attendees. And yeah, that's it for this slide. So as they start when you're unsure of, as they say, when you're unsure of where to start at the beginning. A couple of words about how it all started, my path towards CCBA. I don't know if you can tell from the picture in the slide, but this is San Diego Airport. We are in March 2020. I'm just about to go and enjoy a 35-hour flight back home from San Diego, coming back from business trip, preparing for a layover in New York, thinking of how much sleep I'm going to get after the long and exhausting business trip, about all the plans for my project at the time, how we talked about the roadmap for several years and years ahead of us, our big plans for the project, for the product, for our team at the time, and how I can't wait to get back home and share everything with my management. And then I land home, and it turned out that was the last flight from the US because all the airports were closed. As you probably remember, that's when all this wonderful history with the COVID-19 kind of started, the beginning of the pandemic, the lockdown in all the countries. My project got frozen. I was not sure if I even still had a job, basically. So we were all waiting for some good news at that point. And believe it or not, the best thing for me at the time was this little email from IBA, and they were advertising the brand new certification that they were about to launch, offering like a very lucrative deal. At that point, a 100% rebate for this CCA certification, but of course, only in case you passed it. So I kind of thought to myself, why not? I quite enjoy studying. I needed some structure in my life at that point really badly. And it was something to just pass the time um, and in trying to survive and wait for good news on the professional horizon, so to speak. So I signed up for it, and believe it or not, I'm not even sorry. It kind of led uh, it kind of led me here to you. So I'm gonna tell you a little bit more about how it all went. So as Victor has mentioned at the beginning, CCA is the certificate in cybersecurity analysis. And there are some good news and good things about it, and there are some not so great things. First of all, like let's start from the good news, right? There are no prerequisites. You're not required to have any BA experience, first of all, no cybersecurity experience, and not even IT experience, really. You don't have to have any PDUs, which is a big thing, a big pro, I would say, a big advantage of this. It doesn't take that long. You have 90 minutes to finish your exam if you decide to sign up for it, and it consists of 75 multiple choice questions. The questions are mostly knowledge based, um, kind of similar to, as far as I know, the ECBA exam. And that means that they are quite big, I would say, on terms and definitions, but there are also some scenarios as well. They are not quite complicated, not CBAP by any means, but still. Even though there is like no recommended BA experience, and if you think that you wouldn't have to read BA book or to at least don't have to be familiar with it, I'm sorry to disappoint you. The exam for CCA is going to be kind of a cross between the cybersecurity learning materials and the BA book, because they're referring to um, all our favorite areas, tasks, and inputs and outputs, but kind of with the cybersecurity twist there. The current package options, this is, I think I took this maybe a day or two ago from the IABA website, so this should be relatively up to date and fresh. As usual, there are several options. You can opt to just get an e-learning module, e-learning materials, which include the manual and the learning modules. Actually, the version 2 of the modules, which I would say has greatly improved since version 1, which I had to go through. So great news for anyone who decides to go down that road. The next option, the next package is exam only, and the last one, full house, full package, both the exam and the e-learning bundle. And as you can see on the table, of course, it would be the best if you are in luck and you're a corporate member. Unfortunately, in my company, at least, we don't have such an opportunity, but the next best thing is being a member, which I think probably if you have joined this meetup, you probably are. So good news that it's cheaper for the members. In terms of what to select, what to pick, it's of course up to you. I would suggest probably to go for the full package because the exam heavily relies on the framework and the materials the IABA provides, which has been prepared together with the IEEE Society. And even if you manage to get the manual itself somewhere, maybe some of your friends, I don't know, acquaintances, um, have it, or I don't know, you know how to use the internet and you found it somewhere, it wouldn't be of much help unless you go through the modules as well. A couple of words about the knowledge areas. Uh, in terms of the structure on this level, at least CCA is not much different from several other certifications. There are like main areas they concentrate on, and the exam blueprint or the contents include all of those, but in different percentages. We're going to take a look at it maybe a couple of minutes later. The first one is the cybersecurity overview and basic concepts. Of course, you wouldn't get anywhere without the foundation, so that's kind of the section and the area in which they're providing you with that, emphasizing the importance of security and cybersecurity, of course, discussing like basic maybe concepts and key terms like what's a data breach, how it differs from a threat or a vulnerability, who's a hacker, What's the big deal about the ransomware? For people who are not from IT, which, as you know, not necessarily a business analyst is someone who works in IT, even though a lot of us are. They have a couple of, I would say, sections, maybe discussing like things, how cloud differs from on-prem, what's the advantages of the managed security services versus security as a service, different types of servers, why IoT is such a big thing for cybersecurity as well, and in general. What's the costs for securing an organization? I think in the pandemic, probably most organizations are highly and keenly aware of the importance right now. But a year and a half back, it was not so obvious for many businesses. And of course, one of our favorite topics, what's the security compliance all about? All your HIPAAs, GDPRs, all that sort of stuff. The next one is, of course, enterprise risk. And this one mostly deals with the risk management and analysis for the enterprise, and on the enterprise level, your threats to the whole enterprise, how vulnerable or maybe invulnerable, I don't know, maybe you're lucky your organization is, your enterprise is, how you can test that. How useful, for example, the pen testing might be for your enterprise to figure out actually what vulnerabilities your enterprise might have. How important is the business continuity, and why disaster recovery, especially now that a lot of us are still working remotely and the data breaches and hacks still happen every day on a daily basis, how important that is. And if I'm not mistaken, if I remember correctly, threat modeling is also part of this knowledge area. And in my previous at least organization, it was something that they involved the business analyst in as well. In the current one, we kind of have a special department dealing in that, but with the smaller businesses and maybe smaller enterprises. And even if they're just asking for your services as a business analyst, I would say it's a big thing and a really great opportunity to help with the threat modeling in terms of the enterprise risk analysis. The next one, cybersecurity risks and controls. This one is basically like the area 1 and area 2 combined, but it allows you to dive a bit deeper in terms of the risks and vulnerabilities, sorry. It also gets a bit more technical. So I would say that if a person doesn't have a background in IT, it might be a bit complicated and might take a bit more time to get through this one. And also, this knowledge area takes a closer look at the frameworks like the one NIST offers and kind of the controls as part of that. And going into the details of what an attack tree might be, and the one which was actually used, I think, by Microsoft to develop Stride, spoofing, tampering. I don't quite remember what the R stands for, information disclosure and elevation of privilege, I think. Next one, of course, securing the layers. I think the name kind of speaks for itself. The security doesn't stop at cybersecurity only. We have to secure all the layers starting from the physical, which includes like even your parts to your office or the physical location of your servers. And going through the network security and endpoint protection to all kind of the way up to the product security. Actually, that one is considered, in terms of percentages, the smallest area they're concentrating in the exam on. But, and I don't know if I was just the unlucky one. I think when I was sitting my exam, I had like maybe a good third of the questions from the securing the layers portion. So if you think that that's something you don't need to study that hard, I would give it another think. Data security, the usual controlling access to the information and the data both at rest and in transit, classifying your data, your public information versus sensitive or versus confidential information, what you are and are not allowed to disclose. It also includes the encryption information and details, and things like digital signatures as well. Next one is user access control. And that one I always remember when I'm talking to BAs who think that security or cybersecurity is something that does not apply to them, and that they don't have to think about that closely. I go back to user access control and have to remind them that you do have to think about those things, and you do think about those things. The authorization, the roles and permissions, the authentication, the management of the privileged accounts, how the admins are different from our mere mortals in terms of the user base, and how you should do the security management among users is everything that's included in the user access control area. Solution delivery, I would say, is the one that folks who work in IT are most intimately familiar with. So if you're working with SDLC security requirements, this one is going to be like, you're going to breeze through it. It's going to be easy for you. And as usual, risk analysis, but in this case, in terms of the solution that you are delivering and probably not the enterprise you're working at. And the impact assessment is another big one here. The last one, I would say, is probably, as well as data security, the most specific one out of all of those. If you were ever wondering how to deal with the incident response, with the recovery of the information, remediation, what does computer forensics do, which metrics and reporting might be used, that's where that comes. In terms of the percentage, it goes something like this. So as you can see, the two biggest one are data security and user access control, which is good news because I think most of us have probably worked with those. And the smallest one, securing the layers, but as I've kind of mentioned before, maybe I was just unlucky, but there was a lot of those during my exam. I don't know if we have folks at the meetup who had an opportunity to sit for other exams. I don't know, maybe ECBA, CCBA, CBAP. Please put a plus or something like yes, or I don't know, in the chat if you have. It would be just interesting to see if you're just considering another certification or this is going to be your first one.
So we have no pluses so far.
Oh, okay, I see. All right. So, okay, then I'm going to spend a bit more time here. Okay, so in terms of the module structure in the learning materials. And especially if you haven't been through this exercise for other certifications or other exams before, um, the learning materials provided by IBA is something that you probably should consider. And well, with the other exams and other certifications, there are like alternatives that you can use. There is a very famous watermark learning that offers you kind of mocks exams and training for the ECBA, CCBA, CBAB certifications, and I think also for the AC1. I'm not sure about the um, data analytics one, haven't looked that closely into it. And probably you should go with that one if you're preparing for those exams. And it's a really good opportunity to use those training materials and to sit for mock exams so that you know what to expect. For CCA, as far as I know, there are no good mock exams out there, but maybe someone is aware of those. If you are, please reach out to me and give me a link. I would be interested to take a look at that. So this is kind of a very big lead up to my saying that you would be best suited to stick with the learning materials from the IBA. It has SBA book, probably I would say, also has a particular structure, and each module has more or less, give or take, these building blocks that you take a module or two to get used to, but then you're just very used to the whole framework and just breeze through it. The first section is the key terms, which of course your key terms and definitions that are used within this or that knowledge areas. Then something that they call the BA focal points, like what could and what should even a business analyst do and concentrate on as part of working within a knowledge area, one of the ones we took a look at in the previous slides. The next one is use cases, but I would say it's not quite what usually is understood by use cases. So in the learning materials for those knowledge areas, they are describing how some particular techniques or in general how the knowledge area works in the real world, which is something I always missed in BA book, and kind of reminds me of what Carl Wiggers had in his software requirements book. And they're also giving some kind of foundation and the reasoning behind doing some things in terms of the cybersecurity for each area. Like if you are unsure of when and where you might need user access control, as I was saying before, or if data security concerns you, your client, your enterprise, use cases is the section where you can find that information. The next one is related risks. Which risks can the area mitigate, basically? And I would say a more important point of what the risk of doing nothing is, something that we don't always remember to pay attention to. Next one is the technology controls, and I would say it's named a bit misleading because it does not include only the technology controls, but also your guidelines, your standards, maybe some frameworks and policies that are out there in addition to the actual tools. So it might apply also mm, not just to the tools, but also to how it applies to your technology. The next one is the process controls, very tied into with the technology controls. What do you do? How do you use those technology controls, and how it might be applicable to your enterprise? How you might use the framework that's included in the technology control section. And the last one, that's you know how in a lot of classifications there is this section which is called other or miscellaneous, and sometimes it's could be the biggest one, or when you're trying to research something and there are things that you're not sure how to classify. I would say the last one, the explanations of key points and concepts to understand, is kind of the miscellaneous of the bunch. So anything that might differ from section to section, from area to area, kind of falls under that big umbrella, because there's a lot that can be included as part of the cybersecurity and security in general, and they kind of try to collect and gather all of it. And those areas can be very different from each other, and it's not always possible to fit everything into this neat framework they are offering. Okay, the last but not the least, I would say probably the most important, the consideration of whether or not you should go for it. Is it worth it, basically? Um, yes and no, as you can see on the slides. And this is, of course, only from my personal experience. Maybe you have some other thoughts about it. Maybe we have some folks here who have already passed their CCA and were just shy about putting the plus in the chat. But I would say you should go for it if you're just starting your cybersecurity journey and you are interested in learning more about the domain and different subdomains within it, because sometimes you might be working in endpoint protection and monitoring. Sometimes you're working on the I don't know, data security or firewall or something, and you just want to learn and see what's been happening with your neighbors, with the folks who are also dealing with cybersecurity, but they have to work with the Internet of Things. Another reason to try and consider CCA is wanting to revise and structure your cybersecurity knowledge, which is that was kind of my case, because I have several years of experience working in cybersecurity domain, in different kind of genres and subdomains, and I just wanted to take a step back and try to get a bigger picture of all the building blocks and building cubes that allow me to maybe fill in the gaps that I had. And the last two, the other two are the usual. If you are part of the center of excellence at your company or organization, or a BA functional office, or if your organization just is very big on CCA, just loves it, you probably should consider sitting for the exam. And if we're thinking about why it might be not worth it, if you are just shopping around, window shopping kinda, and thinking about different certifications, the first one, you're not great at processing a lot of data. Uh, which might be a bit weird, but let me explain. The learning materials and both the learning modules and the manual have a lot of information to sift through, a lot of different links and other books, courses, videos that you might consider looking up. And they are built, I would say, in such a way, you know how in high school or at university, somewhere in the educational establishment, you are making your notes during the lectures. And the only way those notes make sense to you a couple of days or months afterwards is that you went to the actual lecture and you remember the context behind it. I would say the learning materials are built kind of like that. So if you just stop at them and don't look deeper into the additional information they're suggesting, it might not be for you because it would just take up a lot of your time. Another reason to consider something else is your organization requires you to get a certification, but not necessarily CCA. Maybe it's the CCBA or something else entirely. And the last one, kind of call back to the middle of the presentation. If you don't want to read BA book at all, you probably would just waste your time because in preparation for CCA, BA book is one of the big resources and is going to be a big helping hand to you in terms of preparation, the materials, the structure, and the basis for you as a BA. Because there are several callouts and callbacks to the knowledge areas in the BA book, the tasks, the elements, different techniques in those questions that are kind of built like scenarios. And I think that's kind of it for me. I have some time for a Q&A session. In case anyone has any questions, please feel free.
So, Karina, first of all, thank you for your for sharing your experience and your opinion and all these materials. I believe they are actually very valuable. So, and while our guys are coming up with the questions, I believe I can ask the very first question. So, from your standpoint, what was the most difficult point in preparation for this certification?
Okay, sure. Good question. I don't know how applicable it's going to be to everyone. I started preparing for the exam in March, 2020, maybe continued in April. And they still had this first version of both the manual and the learning modules, which was, in terms of the learning modules, it was just kind of a bunch of videos that I had to watch back to back. And it was really lots of information to process. I myself am not the best at processing the audio information. I prefer to read and to research some things myself. So when I'm just sitting and listening to everything being read to me, it's a bit difficult. But good news, at least, is that in the second version, they kind of reframed the whole experience. So they have both the videos, the quizzes, some kind of interactive stuff like mini tests and mini quizzes that allow you to prepare for the certification. Another challenge I would say was to step outside of my comfort zone and take a look at other different subdomains within the cybersecurity. I was not aware how big and how vast it was. I had an experience with some of it, yeah, maybe if I'm lucky, half of it, but definitely not all the areas they had enlisted and enumerated. So it was both a challenge and a learning experience in the best possible way.
Thank you. So, guys, do you have any questions? Okay, and I believe one more question from my side. Again, from your standpoint, from your point of view, what is the most crucial point in preparation for this certificate? Could you please advise something to those
Yeah,
who will like to successfully pass this certificate?
I could definitely try. I know how many people, when trying to prepare for similar exams, even within the IBA family, um, sometimes tend to think that if they study all the materials closely and they know them by heart, they are probably all set and are going to successfully go through the whole experience and pass. I would suggest bearing in mind that it's not a guarantee, that you should really dedicate some time and first of all try not to eat the whole big elephant as one big thing and try to bite smaller chunks, but maybe better process the information as you're trying to do it. Just spend some time, a couple of months at least, to try and study and prepare for the exam, and also try to map everything you are learning or revising, I don't know, to the experience you might have at your work as a business analyst, if you're working not as an analyst, but maybe someone else in IT, or otherwise maybe in your personal life even, because I think data security is something that we're all involved in and something that affects all of us. Think back to that. Remember that not passing is not the end of the world. Nothing is going to happen if you fail. You just would know what to expect, and you would also always have an opportunity to take it one more time. Just basically try to enjoy the experience.
Yep, I believe that's the main point.
Yeah.
So, and one more question: how do you apply the knowledge received on your projects?
Another good question. My main thing I would say that I took away from the preparation and the knowledge received was to try and improve the risk management process, because sometimes on some of the projects, at least I worked on, that were not cybersecurity related at all, we did not pay enough attention to the risks that might affect security. It's usually things like, oh, I don't know, John has PTO next month, so we have to ask all the questions ahead because otherwise we might not have enough scope. Or we have this huge roadmap and impending deadline, but we don't have enough resources, so we might not get to implement everything in time, things like that. And not thinking about the actual product, the actual end users, and the security aspect of it all. How, if you're not thinking about security upfront as part of your non-functional requirement set, right? Nobody would probably use your wonderful, great, very functional product because you're not using the latest security protocols or something, or you're storing their passwords in the database unencrypted.
Okay, thank you. So I believe that's all the questions that currently we have. So Karina, thank you very much. Yeah.
Sure, sure, yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much once again for your desire to share your experience, and actually for these materials. I believe they will be available for those who would like to pass this certificate. And just for general knowledge, so personally, me, I've got many points for myself actually. So thank you for your time, and we will be glad seeing you on our new meetups in the future.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. And in case somebody wants to reach out and ask anything CC related or not, just please ping me a direct message on LinkedIn or shoot me an email. I've included, as you saw, the information in the presentation. And we can always talk about how hard it is being a BA and sell DBA services to the customer.
Sure. Thank you, and have a great
Okay.
evening.